into two parts, which is DISC works for your introductions and PEREL works for each of your main paragraphs, however many of them you want to include under the PESC model. So if you go under the P for political, you have PEREL within that, and then economic, you have PEREL within that again. So under the introduction, these are the four things that I think are really important to consider to make a fully fledged interaction. The first one is to define any keywords in the question. So have a look at the title, look at what words might be controversial or might not be initially obvious or might be technical terms, and give some kind of a working definition for them that you're going to use throughout your essay. We then move on to impact, which is, why is this question important? And I think this is sometimes unstated in lots of introductions, which is, why, when I'm reading your essay, should I be reading this rather than something else? What is it going to change about my appreciation or understanding of either the subject or the topic that we're discussing in general? We then move on to the scholars section, which is there to highlight if you're going to use any key studies, any key names, or any key figures in your debate. And just by introducing the name or the study or the figure here, it allows you to give a greater sense of overarching structure to your argument, showing you've already considered before you've started writing who's going to come up, how they might be important, and also warning your reader that if they're going to need to do some kind of extra research before. Yeah. Sure, I'll speak. Okay. Okay. And then on the conclusion aspect, this is to signpost where your argument's going. So have a look at what your overall argument for the question is going to be. Broadly, does it fit more into the category of if it's a yes/no question, yes or no? How does that work out? And explain what direction you're going to be heading in and how you're going to be getting there. We then move on to the PEREL section, which you can apply to any of the models for PESC we discussed earlier. So point. Each paragraph should have no less than one, but no more than 1 point. So clearly outline what specific aspect of this paragraph we'll be dealing with and how that relates to the question. This is then the stage where you can deploy the evidence to that you can mobilize to support that point that you've just made. So think about quotations, facts, figures, any scholarly opinions or secondary literature that's been written on it, and link that in how it's relevant to the point you've just made. Then this next section is the one that helps to distinguish the candidates who are looking for a high 2-1 and a first from perhaps the candidates who are going to attain a slightly lower grade, which is linking in multiple perspectives to your argument. So explore the other point of view that you're going to get from the other side of the argument, what other scholars might say. Make your discussion rounded. And then the evaluation stage on the second E is the one that links this evidence and rebuttal together, which is where you go through and explain how your evidence to support your point that you've mobilized is a stronger argument than the rebuttal you've just given. And by structuring it in that way, what you're showing is you've considered both sides of view of the argument you're talking about, but you're also showing why you've sided more heavily with one point of view and formed the point you have rather than siding with that rebuttal section. And so the evaluation section there should take up the majority of the paragraph, because that should be the point where you can express your subjective opinions on the objective facts that you've given beforehand. And then you just have to do the link test at the end, which is tying it back into your initial point. And if you're struggling to link your evaluation to the initial point you've made in your paragraph, that suggests the fact that you may have lost focus slightly somewhere through that paragraph. And that's where you can really rein it back in or edit it if you have time to make sure that that initial point you started with is exactly the same as the one that you're linking back in. And then you can repeat that through a form of conclusion. I think that's all we've got time for. But if you have any questions on that, I'm sure Joyce will send you on my email, and I'm happy to explain that with either a physical example or explain any parts of it, if that makes sense.